Hi, this is Jared Polak, founder of Entre Results, author of Entre Balance. Looking forward to another fun podcast today. I want to give you a forewarning. Most of my podcasts are very short. A lot of them are about 2 to 3 minutes long. This one is going to be much longer. It might be around 15 to 25 minutes. Just want to give you a heads up. I know a lot of you out there listen to the podcast during the nooks and crannies of your day, and you're going to need more time. But this podcast is going to be extraordinarily longer, but also extraordinary, even better than most of my podcasts, because I'm going to cover more information. So it might be good time to carve out a little time to listen to this now or listen to it later. It is in preparation for a talk I will be giving today, and so that's my warning to you. All right, so here we go. I'm going to start off with a little story some of you maybe heard before. This is the shortened version, but has anyone out there ever been skydiving? Yes, have you ever jumped out of a perfectly good airplane? I'll tell you about my first and only time skydiving. I remember being a little bit afraid of flying, so I thought the best way to overcome the fear of flying is to go skydiving. And it's really pretty incredible when you start going up in the plane. And the first time I went skydiving, and a lot of times people go skydiving, it's a tandem jump with a professional that's basically harnessed into you from behind. And I remember as I was going up the plane, and you look out the window, and you get higher and higher in the air. And again, I was already afraid of flying. I'm thinking, man, what am I doing? Well, we get to, I believe, about 14,500 feet, and you go, and you suddenly get your line and people are jumping in front of you and the door is open. You get to the edge of the plane and your toes are literally over the plane and you're looking down below. That is an exhilarating moment. One of the most exhilarating / terrifying moments of my entire life. And I remember counting to 3, rocking back, holding onto my parachute, and then free falling towards the ground. Just a rush. It felt like I was floating more than I was falling. But as we continued down on our descent, I realized as we pulled the chute, and obviously when the chute opens up, you're very excited because the chute opens up. That's a good sign. But I realized that there's something wrong. There's something not quite right. And before I could even comprehend what was going on, the professional who was harnessed behind me yelled in my ear, I don't want to alarm you, but our first chute is getting tangled up. So essentially, as I look up, he's like, look up. I looked up, and our chute is getting tangled up. And it wasn't working properly, and we were plummeting to the ground at too fast a pace. So before I could think about it, the first chute was cut, and we started free falling again towards the earth. Now, this was it. I thought that my life was over. I mean, this was definitely a near-death experience. My first and only time jumping out of an airplane. My chute doesn't open up properly. Next thing you know, the reserve chute opens up, and we quickly head towards the ground. So I get on the ground, thankful to be alive, and that is my near-death experience with jumping out of a perfectly good airplane. Now, the reality is that was a very dangerous situation. My life was literally in danger. And when your life is in danger, you're forced to think about things in your life. And I thought deeply about my life. And I realized there's many things that I needed to change about my life, change about how I live my life, how I did my work. Now, the point here is, the willingness to change and the urgency to change based on the imminence of my near-death experience. And so every time I do a talk, or, if you're listening to a book, or you go to a seminar, or you're listening to information from your boss, or any good information, we have to be willing to change. And there's nothing different as I give this talk today about, what is our level of willingness to change. And we're going to talk about 3 things today. And these 3 things, if you're willing to absorb them, listen to them, implement them into your life, into your work, it will make a huge difference if you're willing to change. Some of us are willing to change, some of us are not. Now, some of these things are simple, but they're simple in terms of me sharing them with you, but sometimes they're very difficult in order to execute. So the topic of my talk today is how to proactively stay on top. And I'm going to use the word staying on top. TOP is an acronym, TOP, and that stands for How do we value our T, time, our O, organization, and our P, planning? How do we value time, organization, and planning in order to stay up on top? And to start with, I'm going to ask you one of the most valuable questions for those that are in business, specifically in commission-based selling, or if you have your own business and you earn what you sell. This is one of the most valuable questions, and many people don't think about this question seriously, but when you think about this question, you have an answer to this question, and you live out the answer to this question on a daily basis, you're going to exceed much more in selling as it relates to valuing your time. The question is this: how much is your time worth? How much is my time worth per hour? How much is your time worth per hour? If you were going to give your hourly worth in a monetary value per hour, how much would you value it at? Would you value it at $50 an hour? Would you value it at $500 per hour? Would you value it at $20 an hour or $200 per hour? You really have to think, how much is my time worth? And that way, as I share with you a couple exercises to value your time even more, it can kind of give you a little mental picture. Okay, so imagine you say my time is worth $75 per hour. Well, if your time is worth $75 an hour, I want you to think through this little exercise, a simple exercise, and do this perhaps weekly, maybe daily at the beginning, or maybe monthly. And it's called Start, Stop, and Keep. Start, stop, and keep as it relates to how much your time is worth. And so it's simple as this. What is one thing that I should start doing on a daily basis in my business that's going to be worth $75 per hour? If I was going to do something that was going to give me a return of $75 per hour, which is what my time is worth, what is one thing I should start doing? It might be simple as following up with past customers on the phone. That could be one simple example. I'm not sure what that thing to start is for you, but make sure whatever you start doing is worth $75 an hour. The second thing is stop. What is one thing I should stop doing that is not worth $75 an hour or is not even close to be worth $75 per hour? Perhaps it's that endless chit chat that happens. Perhaps it's not to having huge gaps in your schedule or my schedule. It could be a variety of things. Perhaps it's spending excessive amount of time with unqualified potential clients. But what is one thing we should stop or eliminate from our schedule that's not worth $75 an hour? Perhaps it's worth $10 an hour or $5 an hour or $15 an hour, and we just should not be doing that activity. Start, stop, and the next thing is keep. What is one thing you're doing right now that you're excelling at that is within your hourly worth? If you're worth $75 an hour, you're doing this. How can you keep doing this? How can you be consistent with doing this? How can you maybe increase the amount of doing this? And the reason that's important is because oftentimes, even if we're doing the right things, often over time, as things get busy, things get hectic, those habits, those things we're doing right fall off the wayside. So, start, stop, keep, a very simple tool that you can apply to your business on a daily basis. If you want to look at another tool as it relates to your time, you can look back simply to an Italian economist. And this Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto, many years ago, he realized that in the Italian economy, 80% of the income in the country was held by 20% of the people. He was also a farmer, a pea farmer, and he realized that 80% of the peas were produced by 20% of the greatest pea pods. And how this relates to us is there's a leadership concept that was developed by many different leaders called the 80-20 rule that was originally taken from Vilfredo Pareto, this Italian economist. And it's essentially, you look at your business in an 80-20 situation. Sometimes you look at it like this. 80% of our income is developed by 20% of our best clients. Maybe those repeat clients or those clients that are going to purchase multiple vehicles, etc., etc. Or if you're looking at freeing up time, as this specifically relates, oftentimes 80% of what we do on our daily activities are low value. They're worth less than our, say, $75 per hour. So what can we do to eliminate those low value activities? If 80% of what we're doing is low value, 20% is high value, how can we eliminate all those low value items so we can stay focused on the top 20%? What can we do to eliminate? Perhaps delegate. If you're in a situation where you can outsource, these are all skill sets that are directly applicable to people that make their money based on commission-based selling, or business owners who make money in this way. So how much is your time is worth? That's the T. Now we're going to look at organization. And before we jump into organization, I think through the first time that I sold my first car. If you want to kind of go down memory lane, think through maybe the first time you sold your first item. I remember the first time I sold my first car, I was in Houston, and there was an individual that was a surgeon, if my memory is correct, and he was in Houston from Austin, I guess about a 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive, and he was looking to purchase a vehicle for his daughter. And now he was in Houston, unfortunately, because his daughter, if I remember correctly, was going through cancer treatment in the medical center. And so he's buying his car for his daughter, and what a great opportunity. The first car I would have a chance to sell would be for someone who is giving it to his daughter who's going through cancer. What a great, warm fuzzy. We always want to sell something and add value to people's lives in selling, and this was a great example. Now, the surgeon, this doctor, he was a little old, he'd been a surgeon for quite a while. He wasn't a young surgeon, a little bit gruff in some ways, pretty direct and to the point to deal with. And I was a professional salesperson at this time. However, this was the first time that I was selling vehicles. I was sold a lot of things in the past. I was a sales manager in the past. I was a professional salesperson, but my product knowledge was nil during this time. And additionally, my manager, even though I just started, he was on vacation during that time. And so I was kind of off on my own with not a lot of guidance. And so I was selling this BMW 7 Series, which is a very confusing, especially for me at that time, in terms of how all the technology worked. And what happened was, he ended up wanting to buy the car, and he was going to buy the car, but there's a few things that needed to be done to the vehicle. And so he was in town, I believe it was a Saturday, and he went off for a little bit, and he was going to come back like 4 hours later at the end of the day, sign all the paperwork, collect the car, excuse me, and drive back to Austin. Well, I put the car to the back, and this is again the first time I did this, and I got busy throughout the day, kind of interacting with other customers. He comes back at the end of the day. I go back in order to get the car, which to deliver the car for him, and I go to the back area, and as soon as I get to the back, I look up, and up on the pedestal was the car. Not the pedestal, on the rack was this car, no wheels, completely in disarray. As soon as I looked at it, I realized there's absolutely no way I was going to be able to deliver this car. And I went and talked to the manager in charge, and anyway, long story short, there's no way this car was going to get delivered. The communication, no one let me know. I just thought you put the car to the back, it got fixed up, it got cleaned up, and then it got put to the front. And apparently that's not the way it worked. So I went and I had to have a very difficult conversation with this gentleman. I thought I could have lost the sale, but long story short, he came back and the car was delivered the following week. Everything was fine. He was happy. But what I learned there was the power of organization. and how, even though it was my first time, I didn't know, I was completely unorganized during that moment. I didn't know the process of delivering a car. There wasn't steps. And so what I learned is the power of developing a checklist. Checklist for everything in business, checklist for sales, checklist for delivery. And that's what I want to talk about, is a little bit about the power of checklists. Now, if I would have had a checklist, I would have definitely checked in the back throughout the day and see the progress of the vehicle in the delivery process. There was definitely things I would have done differently if I would have had a checklist. Now, many organizations already have checklists, and we simply don't follow those checklists. Or sometimes we as sales professionals or business owners have to develop those checklists ourselves. But there's a power of checklists, especially when we get busy. If we have multiple clients, multiple transactions, do we have a checklist so we can proactively think through what we need to do to effectively deliver vehicles? Now, fast forward, say 6 months later, and this didn't happen a lot, but I remember about 6 months later, I sold 5 cars in one day. I started at 9 and I was out the door at 5:15. And so I delivered 5 cars in 5 days, and there's no way that I would have been able to deliver so many different items unless I had a checklist to make sure everything was getting done in order, and I wasn't even thinking, I was just following a pre-planned checklist. So the question is, do you have a checklist? Do you have a checklist for different areas of your work? Are you following the checklist? And then finally, many of you have been professional salespeople for a long time, so you have this checklist in your head. I'm going to challenge you on this too, to write this down or to have some type of thing that you can look at. 2 industries we look at. One is airlines. I don't care if you've been a pilot for 40 years. Every airline pilot follows a checklist every time they get into a plane. They have checklists for emergencies. They have a checklist for everything they do. Checking the plane. There's checklists that go on. Also, back to my early example of medical people, surgeons, they have checklists, they have protocol, certain things that they must do. And so my question is this: if you're going to ride in a plane, or if you're going to have surgery and someone's going to operate on your heart, would you rather the pilot have a checklist that they follow, or would you rather them just wing it? The overwhelming answer is a checklist. So why, as sales professionals, do we not have checklists, or we do not follow checklists ourselves? Next is CRM in terms of organization. I'm not going to go into much detail on CRM, but the reality is, where do we keep all our prospects? What is the way that we organize our follow-up from hot prospects, warm prospects, from our past clients? Do we have a systematic organizational way to follow up with people? Do we give people a gift systematically when they purchase from us? What does that look like? Very key. If you don't have one already, I'm kind of glazing over this just a little bit, just because we don't have quite as much time to go over this in detail. But how do you organize your prospects? And if you don't have a CRM currently, you don't have all your hot, warm prospects or referral sources organized in some type of database, if you don't systematically follow up with people based on the level of hotness, the level of intensity of them looking to make a buying decision, you are missing out. Most organizations have CRMs. If the organization doesn't have one, obviously I recommend it. How can you tweak it? Do you have templates, email templates when you email people? Do you use those email templates? Do you make notes when you're talking to people so you can follow up next time and understand the details of their situation, or also things about their personal life so you can give better customer service? That's the organizational part, and that's broken into checklists, A, and B, CRM systems. Finally, we're looking at planning. And all I'm going to do is challenge you on 5 different steps to pre-plan your day. How can you better plan your day? Number 1, do you have 15 minutes at the beginning of the day, 5 to 15 minutes where you plan and you schedule your day? Number 2, when you're during that 15-minute plan time, do you look at your goals for the year, for the quarter, for the month, in terms of, first of all, have you created those earlier in a previous planning session? But once you have those goals, do you look at those And then from that, from looking at those, number 3 is choosing 1 to 3 items based on your goals to focus on a daily basis. So what do we do on the little daily basis in order to achieve those larger goals? And this is not just a to-do list. This is specifically to reach your goals. Number 4, every day, some people this might sound cheesy, but just to get in the right mindset, do we share maybe our top 10 things we're thankful for in life? Say that out loud. Just constantly be thankful for what you have. That's automatically going to put you into a better mindset, a better mood. And we know that in sales, having the right mindset is powerful. And it's also important just to be grateful for things in life. And number 5, in terms of planning, there's always things that we don't want to do. Immediately after we get finished with our planning session, tackle the most urgent thing that we don't want to do, the thing that we despise. There's a model called Eat Your Frog, which is kind of loosely based on this concept. But what's the one thing we can eliminate from our day, knock it out first thing so the rest of the day becomes easier? All right, in close, we're looking at those the top 3 things: time, organization, and planning. Go out, take action on these things, be courageous this week, and have a better than amazing day.